Well, greetings, everyone. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by 101 CBD, the makers of premium raw CBD oil, tinctures, and topicals. Like their Chillax Blend tincture, which is perfectly formulated to help us deal with the extra level of stress and anxiety that we're all coming up against during this quarantine. Now, they want to remind you that they are fully stocked right now with their Raw Relief CBD hand sanitizer, which is perfect because I use it when I have to break quarantine if I have to go to the store. Usually what I'll do is before I get back in my car after I leave the store, I'll put on the hand sanitizer, so that way I don't have to worry about or think about having to sanitize all the surfaces in my car. So go over to 101cbd.org, pick yourself up some Chillax tincture to help you relax, and also get some Raw Relief CBD hand sanitizer for everybody. And don't forget to use coupon code IMGS25 to get 25% off of that order. All right, everybody, let's start the show. Well, brothers and sisters, welcome back. This is the In My Grow Show, the podcast dedicated to taking the mystery out of cannabis. As always, I'm your host, Alex, and I want to thank you very much for showing up. I do appreciate you taking the time to listen to me. Now, a little later, I am going to keep talking about soil amendments, and today it's going to be about potash. But before that, let's talk about a couple of different things, huh? So next episode, I plan on starting a series about how to start your own small business. And really, it's just going to be tips and some basic advice about just that, how to start your own small business. Because, you know what, I truly do believe that the quarantine is a perfect opportunity for some of you to finally start that business that you've been dreaming about, that you've been thinking about. And I hope that this series of conversations helps, just give you a little more inspiration to do that and, maybe even help you lay down the groundwork for that. And I've invited different people to come on the show and help me have that conversation. So check it out because that's going to be coming up real soon. And now, once again, folks, I say this every time that I, transplant plants or I sprout seeds. Don't forget to mark your pots. Yesterday, I transplanted a few of my cannabis plants into bigger pots. And once again, I ran across the two plants that I never named. I never really labeled. And since they're getting bigger, I still don't know what they are. One of them doesn't look anything like its sisters. So I reached out to Lorax because since they are his genetics, I'm hoping he can kind of help me identify him. I sent him a picture. Hopefully he can kind of steer me in the right direction. And the one that I'm really questioning, I think she looks like a Great Rift Valley, but I'm not 100% sure because she doesn't look like any of her sisters either. She's got a couple of characteristics, but not 100%. She has this purple, excuse me. She has this purple tinge to her already, And I don't think it's a nutrient deficiency. I think those are just genetics. Because all the other plants, they're all getting the same soil mix. And none of them are showing signs of any kind of deficiency for them to turn purple, both the stems and the new leaves that are coming out of the middle from the top. Yeah, so hopefully Lorax will help me figure it out. If not, fuck it. I love a good mystery. And today is Sunday before 420. All 420 events have been moved online. I've seen a lot of different types of events that are going to be happening, concerts, sacred smoking ceremonies, and different smoking sessions, which I guess is another kind of smoking ceremony. Me, more than likely, I'm going to go to Instagram Live, roll a joint, and just have a conversation for a bit, see how long that joint lasts me, see if I don't get too high for that conversation also. And I was thinking of rolling that joint using an old-fashioned rolling machine. Do you guys remember those? A rolling machine? Yeah. Mostly the reason I use that is because if I freehand a joint, all my joints come out looking pregnant. You know what I'm talking about. When it's thicker in the middle than it is on either end, yeah, my joints look like that. That's mostly why I use a joint roller. Anyways. But yeah, I figure that's what I'm going to do tomorrow. That'll be more or less around 1 o'clock, I'm hoping. So if you have a moment and you're on Instagram about that time, 1 o'clock Pacific time, join on it. It'd be cool to say hello. All right, now let's move on to the strain of the week. And today we're going to talk about the Bruce Banner. Now, first of all, I got to stop right there. I'm a fan of comic books, okay? I'm not a geek. There is a difference. I got nothing against comic book geeks. Many of my closest friends are comic book geeks, but I'm just not one of them. I do like a good comic book story, though, don't get me wrong. But anyways, I digress. Let's get back to the Bruce Banner. It is a cross between the OG Kush and the Strawberry Diesel. And it didn't disappoint because as soon as I opened that jar, it had this sweet kind of crisp smell to it, which had the same kind of flavor when I smoked it, except for a little bit of that fuely, gassy taste at the end. It was really nice. I really like the Bruce Banner. It was a great, energetic, heady high. It really helped me focus on whatever I was doing, like hyper-focus. Like, all right, this is what I'm doing, bam, bam, bam. I was totally into it. And I could see why the internet says that it is a great strain to relieve stress and anxiety. Now, the Bruce Banner that I got did come in at a 24% THC, which is awesome. And I totally recommend, if you see it out there in the wild, the Bruce Banner, pick it up. You're going to love it. And that strain of the week was sponsored by Bud Buddy, your one-stop shop for curated cannabis products and accessories. Look, it doesn't matter that all the head shops are closed during the quarantine because Bud Buddy has all the smoking accessories that you need and they're ready to be delivered right to your door. Do you need a new bong? Do you need a new dab rig? Bud Buddy has got you covered. You need a new bowl for that old bong? You need a new bucket for that old dab rig? Same thing. Bud Buddy has got it for you. Maybe you just need something small like a new glass pipe or a 4-chamber grinder. Don't forget, BudBuddyOnline.com is where you want to go to order all of your new smoking accessories. And you get free shipping anywhere in the continental U.S. on all orders over $80. Alright, and now since it is 420 tomorrow, I want to share with you my top 5 list of stoner movies to watch for 420. Now, first of all, let's do the honorable mentions. And I'm going to go with Bridesmaids. If you've never seen Bridesmaids, that movie is fucking hilarious. I don't think it has a lot to do with cannabis, but it doesn't matter though. It's a really funny movie. You should check it out. All right, and coming in at number 5 is Pineapple Express, which is a super funny Seth Rogen movie. I'm not a big Seth Rogen fan, but this is one of my favorite that he's ever done. And then coming in at number 4 is Half Baked, which is with David Chappelle, and I like the scene in that one where they show the cabinet of bongs where all the bongs have a name. I thought that was awesome. And I can't have a top 5 stoner movie list without, of course, Up in Smoke. Up in Smoke comes in at number 3 because Cheech and Chong have been making us laugh about weed for a long time. Now, coming in at number 2 is Easy Rider. If you've never seen that movie, man, that is a cool movie, man. Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper. It's awesome. You should check it out. And my number 1 movie for 420, and this movie does make my top 5 overall movies, by the way, is, of course, The Big Lebowski. I love watching this movie. I will sit there and watch this movie and laugh at scenes that are about to come up. That's how funny I think this movie is. Now, you know how I said I'm not a comic book geek, I'm a fan? Okay, I'm a geek about The Big Lebowski. To the point that I'm actually a ordained minister at the Church of Dudism out here in California, which means I can preside over religious rituals, marriages, baptisms. That's not a joke either. I've got a certificate, it's a whole thing, man. If you need someone to marry you in a pinch, I'm your guy. You just let me know. No problem. So yeah, man, The Big Lebowski makes the number 1 spot on my list of best stoner movies for 420. All right, now let's move on to the report from the Cannabis Front Line. And I'm just going to read some of the headlines that I've seen in the news this past week. The first one comes from the TC Palm, and it is an article entitled, Can Cannabis Save Florida's Waterways? And this is put together by Billy Cox. That's his actual name, Billy Cox. And it's a pretty long article, but basically what it's talking about is that Florida's going to start to try to use, or they're starting a pilot program using hemp to help clean up like the red tide that they get. You know, it's wound up killing like a bunch of sea life, man. A bunch of manatees died one year, like I think it was like 250. Not exactly sure the number, but it was up there, man. It was a lot of them. So some nonprofits down in Florida started talking to some cannabis cultivators, and the cultivators started telling them that with that kind of nitrogen and phosphorus for the pH that it had, which was, pretty acidic, that it'd be really nice to grow cannabis or hemp with. So these nonprofits went out to Lake Okeechobee to measure the water, and it turns out that it's at perfect levels of nitrogen and phosphorus to grow hemp. And what they're going to do is just grow it to veg They're not going to let it go to flower. They're going to chop it down before it flowers. And the main reason is once the hemp plant switches to flower, it doesn't take up as much nitrogen and phosphorus as it does in veg. So it's not as effective of pulling those nutrients out of the water. So the plan is to do about 10,000 to 20,000 acres of hydroponic cannabis plants. And Lake Okeechobee is about 440,000 acres. So that sounds like a really interesting project. I really want to see how that goes for them. They're saying it's going to take a few years to really clean it up. There's so much pollution in that lake right now. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how that's going to work out, man. I wonder how much success they're going to have. It sounds like a great idea. You know, because they do have to try something, man. It gets pretty bad from all the newsreels that I've seen. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is Mexico. Once again, they have pushed back the date from when they're going to have their cannabis legislation, their cannabis laws up and running. They've pushed it back once already because of the coronavirus outbreak. And an announcement came out just a couple of days ago that they're going to push it back even further. And it looks like that date is December 15th. They're hoping by then the emergency of the COVID-19 will be over and, you know, the legislative session can come back and they can hammer out some of the details. Which, by the way, I read some of the details and something made me kind of scratch my head. Let me see. Let me find it here. Okay, it says here, one of the proposals introduced would allow adults 18 and over to possess and cultivate marijuana plants for personal use. Individuals could grow up to 20 registered plants as long as the total yield doesn't exceed 480 grams per year. Okay, right there, we need to do some math. 480 grams is just over 1 pound. So they're saying here you can have 20 registered plants, and I don't know what that means by registered plants, but let's put that aside for a minute. Out of those 20 plants, you're not allowed to pull down more than a pound collectively, all 20. That's insane. How do you justify that? You can't. It's that wording right there makes my head spin in so many directions. Because first of all, the regulations don't state the size of the plant. You could grow trees and pull down more than a pound off of one plant. They want to cap it to 480 grams per year of total yield. That's crazy. So there you go. See, the grass always seems greener on the other side, right? Until you look at the details. But we'll see how that goes after December 15th. And the last story comes out of the marijuana moment. It is entitled, Worker Fired by Amazon for Medical Marijuana Wins Key Decision in Federal Court. This was put together by Kyle Yeager. So a few months ago, a worker in Amazon's warehouse, I think it was in New Jersey, he was fired because he peed dirty on a drug test. And he fought it in court. He took Amazon to court, and he won in New Jersey, saying that Amazon, needs to respect the fact that he is a cannabis medical patient since medical marijuana is recognized in New Jersey. So Amazon decided to take it to federal court because they knew that since cannabis was federally illegal, and one of the things this guy was leaning on, that this fired employee was leaning on, was the Americans with Disability Act, which is a federal act about protecting people with disabilities. And Amazon thought, well, since he's using that as one of the legs of his lawsuit, the federal government would throw it out because cannabis is not federally recognized as medicine. So in order to get around that, the defendant, the employee that got fired, he simply just took that off the lawsuit, along with some other, legal things that him and his lawyer did. But that and those other changes made it so that the federal court had to kick it back to the state. And the state court said that Amazon has to make reasonable accommodations for this person, since it is a state's issue now, since he is a cannabis patient in New Jersey. So I think that's a great victory, a big win for cannabis and cannabis patients, man, right on. And that, brothers and sisters, is the report from the Cannabis Frontline, and you can find links to all of these articles in the show notes of this episode. All right, now let's move on and talk about soil amendments, and this time it's going to be about potash. And while I was putting this together, I learned quite a bit about potash that I did not know about. All right, let's get started. First of all, potash is a term widely used nowadays to describe naturally occurring potassium salts, including various mined and manufactured salts that contain potassium in water-soluble forms. Now, mined potash ore is typically going to have anywhere from 8 to 10% of potassium. Most of the world's potassium is in deposits of ancient dried inland oceans where the salt water has evaporated. And the potassium salts have crystallized into beds of potash ore. Now, these deposits are naturally occurring mixtures of potassium chloride and sodium chloride. Now, sodium chloride is just basic table salt. Now, just a quick word about using potash and wood ash. Both of them are really acidic. They will pull down that pH level in your soil. So just monitor the pH. And a really quick safety note when you're using potash or wood ash or even lime, use protection. Use protective eyewear. Use a face mask. It's really fine dust that it's not good for you if you breathe it. It's not good for you if you get it in your eyes. Don't spread it as a top dressing over your soil on a windy day. For a couple of reasons. One, you don't want the wind to blow it all away, and you also don't want the wind to blow it into your face. Now, just a quick reminder, potassium is a vital part of photosynthesis, and it also helps with water retention, and it helps the plant take up nutrients. Potassium is also going to help the plant, fight disease and fight any kind of pest stress also. So a little bit of history. Potash got its name because in the early days, the primary source of potash was the ash from burning hardwood. Hardwood ash, or most wood ash, has a lot of potassium carbonate in it. See, what they would do is they would take the ashes from big wood fires and they would put them in big iron pots. They would add some water to it, and they would bring the water to a little bit of a boil and let most of it boil off, and then they would put it aside and let the rest of it evaporate off. Then they would use what was left over, which was a white substance that they would call potash, and they used it for a lot of different things. They used it to make soap, to make glass, gunpowder, and also as plant fertilizer. And that's how it started to be known as potash. And up until about the 1860s, that's how human beings harvested potassium carbonate. Now, just to be clear, in case it was confusing, potash, the mined element, is not the exact same thing as wood ash. If you're going to use wood ash from your fire pit, here's a couple of notes about it. Calcium is probably the most abundant element in it, and it's going to be very similar to lime. Lime is going to have more calcium, but wood ash is going to have a lot more trace elements than that lime is. So that's one of the ways that wood ash is better than lime. The other thing is that lime takes a long time to be plant available, or at least a lot longer than wood ash does. So just remember that if you plan on using lime, it is going to take a little longer. Even though it's ground into fine rock dust, it's still going to take longer than wood ash would to be plant available. Again, wood ash is a great source of potassium, of phosphate, magnesium. It does not have any nitrogen. Typically, wood ash is going to have an NPK of 0.13. If you are going to use wood ash, don't use charcoal briquette ash. Don't use the ash that you get from your barbecue grill, because those charcoal briquettes usually have glues in them, and you may be transferring some of that glue residue into your soil. And the same kind of thing with paper ash too. Paper ash is okay, but you have to understand that paper ash is going to have the residue of ink on it, like newspapers and things like that. So, I don't know how often people buy newspapers. The same thing goes for those Duralogs. Don't use the ashes from the Duralogs. Again, those have a lot of chemicals in them. They have a lot of glues in them, and you could be putting those residues inside your soil and inside your plants. And that, my friends, are all the notes I have about potash and wood ash as soil amendments. And don't forget, if you have a question or a comment about this episode, leave me an email. That is inmygrow@gmail.com. Or you can find me on social media, Cannabis, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. That is at inmygrowshow. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening. Leave a rating and a review. Subscribe to the website, inmygrow.com. You can go over there, and if you want, you can buy a t-shirt. Just hit the support the show tab, buy a t-shirt there. Also, go over to YouTube, search for In My Grow Show with Alex, and then subscribe to the YouTube channel. And then after you do all that subscribing, do the show a big favor and tell 3 other people about the show. That's it. Now remember, if you are a cannabis company and you want to advertise to our worldwide audience and let them know that you're still out there during the quarantine, send me an email, inmygrow@gmail.com, and we will figure out the best way to do that for you. Well, brothers and sisters, I'm going to go ahead and get on out of here. Have a great time tomorrow during 420. Hopefully I'll see you on Instagram Live. But until then, you know that I love you all very much. And remember to always grow, learn, and teach.